The day my shadow stopped copying me. Elio woke up on a very bright Tuesday. He went to the bathroom to brush his teeth, but something felt strange. When Elio rinsed his mouth and stood tall, his dark shadow on the wall was still halfway through its morning scrub. It was exactly 1 second behind him. Elio decided to test his theory. He went to the middle of his bedroom, took a deep breath, and took a giant, sudden hop into the air. He landed with a soft thump, but on the floor, his shadow stayed perfectly flat and still for a whole second before finally jumping up to meet him. By the time Elio walked outside into the garden, the shadow had stopped trying to catch up entirely. Elio stood perfectly still by the big oak tree, but his shadow wasn't standing still at all. It was leaning casually against the shadow of the tree trunk, whistling a silent tune. "Hey," Elio hissed, looking down at the grass. "You're supposed to do what I do. That's the rule of being a shadow." The shadow didn't listen. It reached down, picked up the silhouette of a pebble, and tossed it toward the shadow of a nearby pond. Inside the house, Mom was busy making lunch in the kitchen. Elio tried to explain that something was wrong, pointing frantically at the floor. "Mom, look! My shadow is broken." Mom just smiled, moving a plate of sandwiches to the table. "I'm sure it's just tired of the same old routine, Elio." But the independence was getting out of hand. While Elio sat at the table eating his crusts, his shadow was busy performing a dramatic shadow opera on the kitchen wall. It waved its arms and took grand, sweeping bows to an invisible audience of shadow spoons. Later that afternoon, Elio's friend Nia came over to play. They decided to play hide-and-seek among the flower beds. Elio found the perfect spot behind a thick green bush, but his shadow refused to hide with him. It stayed right out in the open, stretching its long arms toward Nia. Nia couldn't stop laughing. She knelt down on the grass and reached out her hand toward the dark shape on the ground. To her surprise, the shadow reached back. It gave her a gentle high five, its dark fingers tapping against her palm like a cool breeze. Elio felt a little jealous at first, but then he had a bright idea. If the shadow wouldn't follow him, maybe he could follow the shadow. When the shadow started to dance a silly jig toward the swings, Elio hopped up and mimicked every move, dancing along with his own silhouette. From that day on, Elio and his shadow didn't worry about being perfectly in sync. Sometimes they moved as one, and sometimes they moved as two. Elio learned that life is much more interesting when you let your own light and your own dark do their own thing.